Hello, and welcome to Everyday Simple Somatics, a podcast dedicated to helping you find healing through your body's natural wisdom. My name is Dr. Christine Baker, and I'll be your host. So today we are going to be exploring how to respond to shock trauma through a really simple exercise around orienting. So if you've ever experienced a sudden accident or witnessing something really frightening or just gone through actually any experience that leaves you feeling really frozen or overwhelmed, then you've encountered what we call shock trauma. And so today I'm going to help you understand what happens in your body and nervous system during those moments and give you a practical tool to how to help your nervous system find its way back to a sense of safety. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Christine Baker. I have been a trauma therapist for 13 years, and I am a somatic experiencing practitioner, which just means that I'm a person that believes strongly that trauma is not just an event that happens to us, but it is the imprint left on our body by that event. And therefore, the body must be brought along in the trauma recovery process, hence the creation of this podcast. I know that when people hear nervous system work or somatic healing, it can feel like this big kind of confusing concept. And I wanted to make it very simple and very practical. And so every episode of this podcast is a symptom. And so you can literally just scroll through the episode list, pick out the symptoms that apply to you, and listen to those episodes. Each episode will give you a practical tool for how to address that symptom. And my hope is that that tool can become a rhythm in your life, because that is where we really begin to see change in the nervous system, is when we are offering it consistent signs of safety. If you are completely new to nervous system work, I would encourage you to go back to the first 10 episodes of this podcast. I call them the essential foundations. These are just kind of the basics of the nervous system, and is a great place to get started. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, I would love to invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are currently watching or listening. I'd also like to invite, we had our first 5-star review the other day, and I'd love to invite you to do those as well. So I know on the iTunes podcast, maybe on Spotify too, you can actually do reviews. And I would just love to hear, I get messages all the time from people about the podcast, but I would love to hear how it's impacting you, because I know for me, when I'm trying to figure out what podcast I want to listen to, I definitely go read those reviews. So would so appreciate any words that you would want to share just to help other people find these resources too. Okay, so what is shock trauma? So unlike developmental trauma, which is something that occurs over time, typically in those early childhood years, those really important developmental years, shock trauma happens suddenly and unexpectedly. It could be a car accident, a medical emergency, a natural disaster, or just witnessing something disturbing out of the blue. And when we experience something shocking, our nervous system goes into protection mode. And that would be, as you guys know, fight, flight, or freeze. However, because we didn't have time to orient to what was happening to us, hence the word shock, right? We often do not get the opportunity to complete these protective skills of fight, flight, and freeze. And so I kind of just said this, but what makes shock trauma unique is that it disrupts our ability to orient. So orienting is how we locate ourselves in space. I've said this so many times on different platforms. Our nervous system is our internal safety scanner. And so anytime we walk into a new room, we're going to automatically, look both ways, kind of take a scan of the room. That's orienting. And when we orient, we are assessing safety, threats, and where we are in relationship to those things. It is a fundamental survival skill, and it is something that helps stabilize our nervous system and helps us reconnect to safety. And when shock trauma happens, it is shocking, and therefore we did not have the opportunity to orient to what was about to happen to us. And so our ability to orient gets disrupted. And so this is the skill that we want to revive or reconnect to. So let's talk about what's happening in your body. When shock trauma occurs, several things happen in your nervous system in an instant. So first, your autonomic nervous system activates the survival responses. Your heart races, your muscle tenses, you prepare to run or fight. And if neither of those things are available to you, that freeze or collapse will start. Second, and this is critically important for today's practice, your orientation response gets interrupted. So you didn't have time to fully process what was happening or where the threat was coming from or where safety was. And this creates what Dr. Peter Levine calls incomplete survival responses that remain stuck in your body. Your body is literally holding on to that moment of shock. And so what does that look like? When our orienting gets disrupted, you might have ongoing symptoms like hypervigilance. So constantly scanning for danger, which makes so much sense, right? Your body is so wise. I had an experience that I didn't get to orient to. And so now my body is going into overdrive with orienting. It is scanning everything and everywhere, right? Because it is trying to make sure that that kind of painful shock experience doesn't happen to me again. So hypervigilance is one. Number two, a startle response. And that's that kind of like jumping at sudden noises. This is super common in people that have experienced shock trauma, which again makes so much sense. It's like your body is doing over and over again what happened to it in the original shock trauma, that kind of startle and bracing up because it's trying to protect you against something like that happening again. And so even if someone just drops a book, your body is like, oh, threat that I wasn't expecting. And so it's going to jump up and brace, right? Disorientation or brain fog, which I think is probably pretty tied to that freeze response that can come in when we don't have time to orient. Feeling unsafe, even in safe environments. Again, I think that this is tied to that experience of I thought that I was in a safe environment. And then something shocking happened. And so now, anytime I'm in a safe environment, I feel a little scared to let my guard down, right? Again, so much wisdom in the body. And then the final one I have here is flashbacks or intrusive memories. And again, this is just your body trying to complete that survival protective mechanism that it didn't get to complete originally. And so these symptoms, they're not signs that you're crazy. I have so many clients that will talk about particularly their startle response, and they'll say like, oh my gosh, I'm just like, I don't know why I can't calm down. Like, what is wrong with me? I'm just an anxious mess. It's like, no, this is actually your body's wisdom. These are signs that your nervous system is just trying to complete that orienting process so that it can find safety again. Okay, today's practice, we are going to slowly and consciously practice orienting. Okay, we're going to allow our nervous system to complete what it couldn't complete during the original event. My hope is that this can really help restore some of that safety in your body and in your environment that got lost in the shock trauma. So this is going to be very simple. Ultimately, I want you to choose a space in your environment that is going to represent the shock. Okay. And again, like, we're not going to do level 10, a shock, right? Like, don't do a car accident. Don't do these like big T traumas. Let's maybe just do the time that your kid popped around the corner and said, boo. Okay. Let's start there. So, and let's place that somewhere in the room. So let's say if I was going to do this here, I might say that my kid popping around the corner could be right here, my door to my office. And so my door is going to represent that shock trauma. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to very slowly orient towards the shock. Okay. So we are slowing down and taking in as much as we can about what is happening in our body as we move towards the experience of the shock. So go ahead and choose what shock you'd like to work with and identify a place in your environment that you can do that little piece of work with. And then I'd love to invite you to just get comfortable in your chair, place your feet on the ground. Notice the things that are supporting you. Floor under your feet, the chair under your seat. And then I'd love to invite you to just kind of generally look around the room and just notice your environment, taking in some colors, some shapes, some textures. And take as much time as you need with that. And then whenever you're ready, I'd love to invite you to very slowly turn. And I would say start with like your eyes, and your eyes kind of lead the orienting, followed by your head, followed by your body. Okay. And so I'm actually going to make mine be this plant behind me just so that you guys can see how slowly I move as we do this orienting. Okay. And so with each little bit of movement, you may notice your activation level goes up inside. And when you notice it go up, pause there, stay with that activation, notice the sensation of it, see what happens next until it kind of settles a little before you keep moving. And so you very well are probably going to have to pause the podcast as you do this. Okay. All right, let's give it a shot together. Just very slowly turning my eyes and head. And I just noticed my stomach drop, so I'm going to pause here. My body kind of instinctively took a breath that helped settle my stomach. So now I can kind of keep moving. Just notice what's happening for you. Take as much time as you need with this. Yeah, and as I got here, I kind of felt like a shrinking in sensation. So I'm just going to stay here, just notice that and see what happens with it. Once it settles, I can kind of move forward. And then once you get to the item that you've selected to be the shock, and I did little quotation marks for the shock, right? Just stay there, take in as many details about that physical item as you can, and notice what happens inside. So, noticing, I'm going to notice the leaves and the different shades of green and the pot that it's in and all the things. Yeah, and I definitely noticed like some activation in my stomach again, a little bit in my shoulders. And just so that we're not here for an hour, I'm going to do that work later on. But you can see how powerful that is, right? We are giving our body a chance to orient to what surprised us before. And that can really help restore that healthy orienting that got lost in the shock. So, some ways that you might bring this into your everyday life, I think one, this is a skill to practice as often as you can during your day because orienting is the skill that stabilizes your nervous system because it is what your nervous system uses to find safety. And when you are intentionally using orienting to look for safety, you're giving your nervous system exactly what it wants. And so this skill is amazing to use as often as you can throughout your day. So maybe even tying it to certain rhythms in your life, right? When you wake up, you orient to your day, right? When you get in the car, you orient to what it's like to be moving from your home to your work. And then obviously, I think it's something that you can use after a challenging situation, like getting startling news or experiencing a flashback or entering a new environment. These are all moments where this practice of orienting, slowing down, taking in your environment can be really supportive to your nervous system. And so that is actually all I have for today. I hope that this was a helpful practice. I can't wait to hear what you guys have noticed as you did it with me. I wanted to take a second and share with you what we're going to be doing for next week's episode. We are going to be talking about how to manage a nervous tummy. And so, a very common response to trauma and chronic stress is digestive issues. And I can quite often, if I'm going into a difficult situation, I can get nervous tummy. And so I want to give you a somatic skill that you can use when that nervous tummy starts to show up to just offer your digestive system some support. And so that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So if this episode has been helpful for you or that one sounds interesting, again, I just love to invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are watching or listening. And then if you're finding that these practices are supportive to you and you want the space to go deeper in somatic work, I'd love to invite you to the Somatic Wellness Collective. So this is my monthly online community for learning and practicing nervous system care in real life. Inside the collective, we have on-demand classes, I think, that really offer something for every learning style and can be done when you're doing laundry, when you're going on your run for the day. They can just be put on as you move through life, offering your nervous system the support that it needs. We also have live Q&A, guest lecturers, movement classes, lots of access to somatic tools that you can do in 10 minutes or less. I am all about helping students create somatic rhythms in their life that are actually sustainable and not overwhelming, which leads to the final piece. I think it's a really cozy and supportive community where your nervous system gets to just come as it is. And we are keeping in mind how the nervous system responds to new environments as a part of how we teach the material. If this is something you're interested in, check out the show notes and I've got some information about it there. And in closing, just as a reminder, your body has innate wisdom. We just have to learn how to listen to it. And that's what I'm here for. I'll see you next time.